We're here this afternoon with Rebecca Vargha, who is the SILS librarian, and Rebecca is also the current president of the Special Libraries Association, so we're pleased that you have some time to talk with us this afternoon. Why don't we begin with just tell us a little bit about the many roles you play here on campus, and then we'll slide into the SLA responsibilities later on.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Well, I am the librarian here at the Information and Library Science Library. We are the third largest branch library on campus. We have over 95,000 volumes. So yes, indeed, we still have plenty of books along with all that wonderful digital information. And we have 15 students who work with us, and most of those are graduate students who are working in the library and lab environment. So it's lots of fun. I think my favorite part of this job, as it is with you, is working with students and doing some mentoring, coaching, and showing people what it's like in the real world in terms of ordering books to digital type information in terms of databases, retrieval, you name it, we have it. And we have everything from children's literature to computer science text, and that's one of the joys and challenges of the job, is to look at that wide range of material and to make sure that we have information before people even know that they need it yet. So that's the goal. And because UNC is a public university, one of the tenets that we have is to serve our community. So that community is not only Chapel Hill, but our library in particular is well regarded in the state of North Carolina, and many practitioners, alumni from SILS, as well as other people who are in the field, will say, and this is the phrase I've heard quoted most often, they'll say, well, I know the SILS library has it. So if they're looking for professional reading and they might be in a geographically dispersed area, then they're going to give us a call or send us a quick email. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the really interesting pieces of this job.
That's great. I didn't realize there were quite so many students involved. And do they tie some of this work in with their classes?
They can. For example, and this is an excellent example, one of our adjunct faculty from Duke who teaches the preservation class, every fall we let her use our library as a case study. So she'll bring all of her instruments over and we figure out, okay, what are the humidity levels like, and from a preservation point of view, it's a real example, and plus it's a great way to sort of monitor the situation. We're in this lovely building, which was constructed 1921 or so, but as you know, it also brings with it some challenges in terms of working in it, whether it's making sure that you don't have any mold or what's the humidity in terms of the books in the collection. So yeah, it's very, very interesting, and it's never dull. There's always something going on.
I know it's quite an active place and a very pleasant place. So you run not only an efficient shop but also a very beautiful place. So.
Thank you very much. Well, as I say, it's about the students and the faculty and staff, and we enjoy all the interactions that we have with them. And in fact, recently, about 3 weeks ago, we had a Harry Potter event, which was something that we haven't really done a lot of, but we hope we can do more of it in the future. And essentially, we had a Harry Potter event, an outreach project, and one of our grad students was one of the key players on that team. So we pulled together a quiz, a costume contest, and we even served a punch. It was a fruit punch in terms of refreshments and things like that, and had an inspired reading by one of our very own Brian Sturm, one of our esteemed faculty members here. So that was terrific, and we had kids who were in elementary school, we had grad students, and in fact, one of our grad students won the competition for the Harry Potter trivia contest, and it was 3 rounds, 15 questions each, and these were not easy. I mean, you had to really know your Harry Potter stuff. And it was great because the student who organized this is planning to either work in a public library setting or a school media setting. So for her, it was a great practical experience. It was a wonderful way to blend some of the theory that she has learned in her classroom setting and say, all right, here's a real world project, and how do we go about doing that? So I think it's a resume builder. It's just excellent practical experience for her to have had before she goes out on the job market.
What are some of the challenges? You mentioned the diversity of the collection and so on, but that you face in a place like SILS, where we seem to be going in so many different directions.
Well, as you say, we are going in lots of different directions, and that changes as faculty change, research interests change over time, and certainly faculty, we either have new faculty coming on board or we have people who are moving on to other opportunities, so that's one piece of it. But the other part of it, well, the neat thing too for me, having working in a university environment, is the collegiality. Because when you work in other types of libraries, particularly a corporate setting, you may or may not be the only information professional in the whole company. So in a situation in a university as large as UNC, then I just think it's an absolute luxury that all of our stuff comes already cataloged, because the wonderful catalogers in Davis Library are doing central processing. And that may sound like a small thing, but it's really not from a staff point of view. So that's one of the neat things. The support that we get both from the university library and from SILS, because this is a collaborative effort. For example, I think about the CALA program, which is an excellent, excellent program, and as you know, it's Carolina Academic Library Associates, and that was the collaboration between former dean and former university librarian who said, gee, why don't we actually establish an internship program, but let's make it formal, let's put benefits with it. The student gets a stipend each month, and in return, essentially what they're doing is working 20 hours a week, whether it's in technical services or preservation or the rare books room over at Wilson Library. But again, it's not just a paycheck and some benefits, but they actually are getting classes. They work very closely with human resources over in the Academic Affairs Library, and also they get some real coaching and mentoring, because normally with the CALA, all the CALAs I've had, they typically are here for 2 years. And so you have a chance to really help them build that resume. And again, it's the collegiality, because people on campus, especially library staff, are very willing to help students with their resumes, to read their letters and say, well, have you thought about changing your resume to look like this? So I think it's a very collegial and very cooperative group. So that's pretty cool. And like any place, we're a state institution, so you have your state budget, and from year to year you just wonder and look at that. So that isn't any different than any other place. So.
We certainly have seen changes in terms of, say, journal subscriptions, and
Sure.
that we still have to have the paper journals, as well as having access to the databases. I know you regularly send out notices about new databases that either we've subscribed to or Davis Library has subscribed to. How do we sort of manage to balance that? Do you see this being getting better, or is it still just a challenge to try and pay for both of those kinds of services? There's a redundancy there.
I think that's a very good question, because essentially we have one foot in the print world and we have one foot in the digital world, and as you say, it's a question of balance. Also, one of the other drivers are the publishers. If you look at Sage, Wiley, etc., whomever, and you look at it and say, all right, what types of packages do they have? Do they have an e-journal package? When are we going to make the leap and simply go with e-journals only? And that is beginning to happen. It's beginning to happen in other places as well. So again, it's transition. The change is coming. It's not going to happen immediately, but I do think we will become more and more digital. Let's hope, because research libraries, we want to try to preserve the information, whatever the information is, from clay tablets to digital information or images, video, et cetera, as you know from all of the research work that you do. But again, it's a balancing act, and it's being a good steward, because again, I think we have a special responsibility as a state university to look at what's coming 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and saying, all right, what's out there for the next classes of information professionals who are going to be coming through the program at SILS, because it's really changing. One of the students who worked with us and who worked in the lab too graduated about 3 years ago. She did a program for the North Carolina Special Libraries Association chapter, did a great job, and she was talking about her career path. And it was really interesting. Whenever I talk with people about careers, one of the things I'm fascinated with is titles. What's a person's title? Are they called a librarian? Are they called a senior research analyst, et cetera, et cetera? Well, her title is Customer Experience Designer, which is a grand title. I think that's absolutely, a great way to do it. But interestingly enough, she has an IS degree, and she works for a company that designs the ringtones for your cell phones. To me, that's the difference. You know, typically the traditional piece of it is wonderful. We need everything. We need to have everybody at the table. But I'm sure what you see as well in your classes is the diverse range, whether a person has an LS degree or an IS degree. And the lines are really blurring. And in fact, U.S. News and World Report came out with they usually do a career issue in March, and they did one on March 19th of this year, and they talked about librarians as being one of the top 10 hot careers. And in fact, they specifically said that special libraries were really on the move and the place to be. So it was fascinating just to hear that and to hear what our students have to say when they come back and they're out and working in the real world.
Well, this is a nice segue to the Special Library Association and your dual role as not only our lead here in the library, but also the lead internationally for the Special Library Association. Tell us a little bit about SLA and
Sure.
You know, your sort of vision for where it's going.
All right. Well, as you stated, I am the current president of Special Libraries Association and will hold that title until December the 31st in the end of this year, 2007. At any rate, in fact, I'm on my way to IFLA tomorrow, and that is in Durban, South Africa, so I will be representing the association, and we will have a couple of SLA staff members there as well. So that's always delightful, and it certainly broadens the horizons when you start looking globally at the information profession. SLA is a professional organization that was founded in 1909, so we're coming up on the centennial in 2009, which is always a wonderful place to be, and looking at the past, but also really looking at the future and where we want to go as a membership organization. We have 11,500 members in 75 countries. And for example, in South Africa, we have the Sub-Sahara chapter, and in fact, after IFLA, I'm going to be doing some work for the U.S. embassies there, for the embassy libraries in Cape Town and in Johannesburg. So that will be an interesting extension of the conference activity. So it's a global world. So when I look at SLA, I think about the members that we have globally and where we're going to expand. You know, when you become a president or a leader of one of these associations, my personal philosophy is picking a couple of things that you can do really, really well. So, in my inaugural speech last year, the two things that I talked a lot about were membership, because as people begin to retire and new people are coming in, there's a lot of churn rate, as you would have in any organization. But so what we did is developed some strategic strategies for membership recruitment, and that has been going along beautifully, and we are well on the way to having an additional 1,000 members by our centennial year, which is 2009. The other big piece of this is celebrating a centennial, and that doesn't happen overnight. You need some lead time, and our conference will be in Washington, D.C. in 2009, which has some fabulous opportunities. So I appointed a very large committee to get going on that, and they started last year, so they're well on their way. We had our annual conference in Denver in June of this year, and Al Gore was our keynote speaker, and he was amazing. In fact, his book, Assault on Reason, had just been published about 2 weeks prior to our conference. So we were very, very fortunate to have him as our keynote speaker. And he really talked a great deal about the power of information and where, as a profession, we're poised to go. And he talked a lot about business decisions and using information and relevant information to make good business decisions. As you mentioned, I have a very diverse background. I worked at a not-for-profit in the Research Triangle Park, the National Humanities Center, a wonderful place to be a librarian right out of school and have some great mentors and work with excellent scholars. So I was there for 14 years. By that time, technology was coming along, and we were beginning to get into CDs and PCs and all that sort of stuff, and it was back when you thought 1200 baud rate was like really the little sports car out there on the information superhighway. At any rate, I ended up going to work for a small software company called SAS Institute over in Cary and set up their corporate library and had the good fortune to be there for 6.5 years. By that point in time, Nortel Networks suggested that I might want to consider working with them, so I was very fortunate and again worked with some great people. There were 68 people on our global team, and we worked in virtual teams. So that was fascinating, and in both of those I learned so much about the technology and about telecommunications. And then in 2001, again, had a unique opportunity to be able to come to UNC. And since I did my undergraduate here it was just a thrill to come back and be an employee on the UNC campus.
Well, it was our good fortune to be able to attract you here. So,
thank you.
It's great to have you here. Can you say a little bit about sort of the range of jobs that people in either SLA or libraries are moving into? I mean, you talked a little bit about how this is just so broad.
It is.
And growing, exciting area.
It is, definitely. For example, within SLA, we have people who are in corporate. We also have a large number of our members work for the federal government. So Library of Congress, Congressional Research Service, NASA, you name it. And we have a military librarians division within SLA, because the way SLA is set up, it's set up with chapters geographically and then divisions, which are subject areas. And one of the most exciting things that's happened in the last year or so is that we have two new divisions, knowledge management and competitive intelligence, and also the government librarians, the government information group has come along. And that's a great thing about SLA. It can really morph and change, and it's very much a grassroots effort. You know, our members say, gee, I think we ought to start something on competitive intelligence. You get the petition going, 100 signatures, and away you go, people join. And so when there's a new area, and again, I think that's what's happening in our field. If you look at informatics, for example, bioinformatics, that's a wonderful example of the convergence in terms of fields, and that's what you're seeing more and more of. And I think it makes the profession stronger because we have people who are coming in with different backgrounds, different work experiences, and that blend benefits us.
Well, I can certainly see why not only the students love to work here in the library, but also why the faculty is so happy, and that's a tough thing to accomplish. So kudos to you for all of your good work here at SILS, and also in taking the lead on the Special Libraries Association. Other things you'd like to add before we close here?
Thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed talking with you this afternoon, and if anybody has any questions about SLA, I'm happy to talk to them.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Gary.